Good evening. This is the Town of Kennebunkport Planning Board. This is our September 18, 2024 meeting. For those of you who want to attend by Zoom, you'll find the information on the Kennebunkport website. The first item on the agenda is attendance, and it looks like we have a full board. I believe Galen is attending by Zoom.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. I'm here.
Okay. The second item of the agenda are the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes and read the minutes? Any corrections?
I thought they were good. I moved that we accept them.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Ed,
Yes.
I approve.
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 Okay. The minutes are approved then. And I'll get to the agenda. Our first three items basically are continued at the request of the applicant. That is the Goose Rocks Beach Association, 135 Ocean Ave, the Arundel Condo Association, and 80 Turbot's Creek Road. Okay. The next item on the agenda is 240703, 9 Cottage Avenue. The applicant is Gallagher, and this is going to be a public hearing, but first I'll hear from the applicant. And if you would review and summarize what you're going to do.
Good evening. My name is Mark Gallagher. My wife and I own a home at 9 Cottage Avenue in Kennebunkport. I have been before the planning board in 2 previous meetings. We are proposing to lift our home roughly 8 feet above ground level. We were impacted greatly by the January storms this year. We're hoping that by lifting our home that we will be given peace of mind that we won't be impacted by future storms. The only additional information that I have tonight from the previous meeting, I do have, there was a question in regards to, we have a front staircase that comes from the front of the home, and then we are replacing a deck that's on the side of the home. That deck previously had 2 staircases. We spoke to the code enforcement officer today, and because we have we will be increasing, I think, the area that is impervious. Our plan is to not have 2 staircases coming down that side deck and just having an entrance from the home to that deck. We're told that if we have railings, which we previously had around that deck, that would be compliant. We had a question on that, and we were able to confirm that today. So I have plans that have that side deck that does include a stairway. I'm going to have to amend that to create a plan that does not include that stairway. I also have a plan for the front staircase, and then a top view of both of those areas. Although that top view will have to be amended as well to take the 2 staircases out from the side deck. And so I will make sure that gets done. My contractor tells me it'll take 3 to 4 days to be able to do those drawings again to scale. And I think that's the only additional information that I would be providing to the planning board, unless there's obviously more information.
And I guess the question that we had, Mark, was it was to keep that net impervious equal to or less than what you currently have.
Yes.
So it'll just be a matter of, by subtracting the 2 stairways off the deck, does that equal the new one on the front in impervious area? Or will you need to adjust some of the flagstone or some of your concrete or some of the driveway?
We believe that will compensate and it'll keep us at existing or reduced impervious. However, if that's not the case, then what our plan is, we have a driveway to the side of the home. What we would do is take off a portion of that driveway to make up for that area, plant grass, whatever,
Just
would
make
be
it
able to
impervious,
make
make it
sure that we
pervious.
stay existing or
Yeah.
below what we previously had for impervious.
Mike?
Okay, yeah, and the only other question I had was on the, call it the engineering or the contractor drawings.
Yes.
It showed a lift of 11 feet, but I know all the discussion has been 8 feet. And so I wanted to confirm that the lift was 8 feet planned.
I'll have to go back and look at that, at the engineering plan.
Yeah, it's just on the plan. I don't know if they use kind of a, I don't want to call it a generic plan, but the distance was 11 feet on that. But I know in all the discussions that we've had up to this point, you've always said 8. And I just
Yes.
wanted to confirm what the plan was. Was it 8 or 11?
And you know what I think is confusing me is the fact that I believe, so we're 3 feet, currently, where our foundation is cinder blocks.
Right.
And I think they're approximately 2 to 3 feet. So my question, I can't remember if it's 8 feet from the floor where we are now, or it's 8 feet from base level, but I will clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I apologize.
Oh, no, I should have caught it earlier.
No worries, yeah.
Those were the two I had.
I will say this, we're 17 feet to the peak of the home,
Right,
from the ground.
right.
And I think so if we were to go,
You're good either way. I just
yeah.
didn't know, you've got clearance for the height limit is 30.
Yes.
Whether you move it 8 or if you move it 11, you're still under
yes,
the.
That's my
the
understanding.
Requirement, yeah. Well, I ran all the numbers this week.
great, thank you.
Other comments? No?
No.
I think there was a question there. Mr. Francis had asked that the volume increase, the confirmation that the volume increase was no more than 30% allowed.
I think that's
Was
That's
that
on-
taken care
on
of?
the Cleves Ave one.
That's Cleves, yeah. This one, we're
Oh,
just
I'm-
literally lifting the house, so we're
Okay.
not
Well, he's not
changing the volume.
design
He's
of
not
this one,
changing the
but
design.
It's
That is a
just
question on the next.
levitating.
On the next one, okay. Yeah. My error,
No worries.
okay. If you have.
Nope, I was scratching my head.
Okay. If there are no other questions from the board, I'll open the public hearing.
Can I just say one additional thing?
Sure.
I forgot earlier. I know that Galen had also asked for a diagram of the home with the different elevations, so a view of a portion of the home that shows the actual, the piers that will go up and how high and so forth and so on. I provided those today to Galen and to Nadia as well, too. So that was I mentioned that I only had one additional piece of information. That's another additional piece of information as well. And I just wanted to cite that. I forgot to mention that earlier.
Okay, I don't think the board has seen that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, then, the public hearing is open for anybody in the audience who wants to make a comment or talk. Okay? If there's nobody here that wants to comment, is there anybody out in
hands raised on
video land? No? Okay. In that case, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
A motion to find complete or
To
approve?
approve.
It is,
A motion, I make a motion to approve the application?
Okay?
so let me ask a question on that motion. I certainly was thinking we were ready to approve this, but I think what we've just heard is that there's an amendment to the plan that's being proposed that would clarify the impervious net 0. And there was one other thing,
The elevation?
the elevation.
Yeah.
Do you want to approve it and add those as a condition, or how do you want to handle that?
We can do either way.
I think I would add it as a condition.
I'm good with
So-
that. Yeah.
So,
So elevation and net area.
Yeah, I think you're looking for that 8 versus 11 to be clarified.
Yep.
And that the updated drawings will show that the net impervious area is not increased. If you can do that, And when you know, as a condition, then I think I'm ready to approve this as well. I would agree.
Okay, we have two conditions then?
Yep, and I'll update the FO,
Okay,
FOF for that.
Okay, then it won't be read today.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Then with those conditions, I'll second the motion again.
Yep,
All right.
Okay,
I would approve.
I approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Okay,
And I'll have that based on what comes in and with the conditions ready for the next meeting.
yes,
Okay.
okay. So with those, if that information is available to the planning board, then we'll have the findings of fact at the next meeting, which will be in October.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. And I'll work to get that additional information.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
The next item on the agenda, which I apparently was anticipating, was 9 Cleves Avenue,
Cleves.
Sandbox KPT, and that's Phil Schuman as the agent. Would you come up and identify yourself just for the record
Sure.
and give us a summary
Sure.
of the application?
My name is Phil Schuman. I own Beechwood Renovations in Kennebunkport. We are the general contractor handling this project. We're also the authorized agent for Sandbox KPT LLC, which is Zach and Laura Warren at 9 Cleves Ave. If you will recall, similar to the previous presentation, we're here as a result of last year's flooding, and actually, ultimately, we're here as a result of years of water damage on the house, because the initial plan for this was not to end up with a completely new structure. The plan was to do a small renovation, and then it turned into the flooding, and then it turned into we could lift the property, and that turned into the discovery of significant damage, rot on the underbelly of the house. The house wasn't going to survive a lift. We had considered basically redoing the first floor skeleton, if you will, and then it just became a return on investment, a value proposition for the family. So that's why we've ended up here, where we are going to build them a new structure. You were kind enough to offer feedback on our first site plan, where we had we're kind of hoping to thread the needle between the property line setbacks and the protected area setback. And you had made some suggestions kindly enough to us to alter that. So ultimately, that's what we did. And when we were here 2 weeks ago, we presented a new site plan that you kindly had deemed to be complete and sufficient in terms of impervious surface coverage and volume expansion. And we are plotting the new house right back where the old one, or the current one, I should say, exists today. So we are, that's ultimately why we're here. We are taking up less property in terms of coverage, the impervious surfaces. We've actually removed some of the impervious surface coverage, so we're under on that. We are under the 30% expansion, volume expansion that's allowed. So that's where we are, and look forward to questions from the public if they have any.
Questions from the board? Larry?
Yeah, I have a couple. So thanks for your additional info.
Yes, I meant to mention that. You had asked, Mr. Francis, you had asked for a few clerical things to be added in to the original application from back in August, and I submitted that last week. There was a box to be checked, I think, for NERPA and one or two other just kind of clerical things. So we added those and sent in a revised copy of that.
Yes, thank you. So my first question is, the lot size on here is 0.42 acres, correct? And then on your plan here, what you have to add these two together. How do you get 0.42 acres?
So that is another, and I appreciate you mentioning that. That is a clerical error. The town's website actually has, depending on the document that you select on the Kennebunkport GIS, one of them will say, I think, 0.42. the truth of the matter is the lot is .21 acres, and that's the square footage that we've been using to determine lot coverage and impervious surface coverage. So, I appreciate that clarification. It is not .42. That was something that I had caught after that application went through, Mr. Simmons, and then forgot to correct.
Okay, so I'd appreciate if you could just update that. For
Sure.
consistency, so .2 acres, so, and then in parentheses, could you put the square feet? Because
I can.
I'd like to compare this to your lot coverage on your drawing here.
Sure.
And then, so I guess, well, my next question was, did you want to change the reference elevation to the NAVD 88 instead of the NGVD 29? It's, just to make it consistent.
Yes.
And then, I know we talked last time about the flood zone. Some of the southern part of the lot's AE +9, and the northern is AE +10. I mean, were you able to confirm that the AE +10 does not have any impact on any portion of the house? It's not really clear where the line is here.
Right, where the delineation is. I followed up with that question. I did get that confirmation. If you want that in writing, I'm happy to provide it. But I know you had mentioned that. I can't remember if it was at our last or
Yeah, it
or
was
2
last
meetings
time.
ago. Yep.
Just your confirmation is good enough. Then I did start the finding of facts, and then what I noticed was there was a reference to the DEP submission.
Yes.
And so you had the actual submission on the July 27th, I think.
That was the first, yes.
And then I think there was an acceptance on October 2nd. Is that correct? Because there's a correspondence from DEP dated the August the 2nd.
So there was the DEP has approved both of our site plans. We brought you that first site
Yeah.
plan.
Okay.
And that came with an initial DEP NERPA approval.
All right.
And then we went back to them with the altered site plan, and they just treated it as if it were a revision or an addendum to the previous permit, and they went ahead and approved that, and you should have a copy of that as well.
That's the one dated October 2nd, I think. Oh, sorry, August 2nd, I think, isn't it?
I want to say September 2nd should be
September 2nd.
the most recent approval.
Okay, so when you update this, could you just attach the whole sequence of DEP correspondence to this? So I don't have
Sure.
to go through there.
Sure.
Anyway, that's it. Looks good, it's on track. It looks good. Just some sort of tidy up info, I think.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Ed?
Well, thank you for the updated narrative, basically lined out,
Right.
which I thought was great because it showed the record and it was consistent with, with the meeting minutes and all of that. What I didn't see was you were going to provide somewhere in the application an affirmation that the volume inside of the setbacks was not increased, and I didn't see that.
It was the final line item in a document that I provided last week to the town. It's a very bottom of a revised document that came in. I think the last few sentences are about no increase. Because that was the last question you would ask, Mr. Francis, during our last session. Yep.
Do you have a copy of that with you?
I don't believe I do. There's the digital copy has it as well as the hard copies that I provided you. It's at the very bottom.
It's the same as that document.
Yeah, it's in the package that we were given.
I think the package that had the header that has the italics and strike throughs, and I think at the very bottom of that, essentially what we did was we compared,
Got it.
building plans and site plans,
Yeah.
and
Maybe I don't have that, maybe I didn't bring that with me then. Okay.
yep.
You have
Yeah,
that,
you can
what
have
he's
a copy.
referring to? 'Cause that's,
I think that's what we're looking at. Yes?
no. No
Doesn't the
additional volume
information
has
on
been
your
added to the new
application
structure
clarify the issue?
inside
I'm sorry?
Inside
I think your application clarifies the issue.
the
right?
property
It
line
does.
setbacks. No, that's just what I was looking for. I just
Yep.
missed it. I have it at home, so, yeah, fine. Thank you so much. That's just what I was looking for.
Sure.
Apologize for missing.
No,
it.
that's okay, sure.
Great.
Okay. Anybody else, comments? Okay.
I'm
Well,
good.
if that's the case, then I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who wants to comment on this application? If not, then I'll ask, is there anybody? No hands raised on Zoom. Okay. In that case, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion at this point if there's no more discussion.
I move to approve the application, subject to the clarification about the
Lot size.
lot size and the detail about the NAVD.
Okay,
I second that.
okay. Ed,
I agree, approve.
I approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Okay.
Could I ask a point of clarification there? Mr. Simmons, if I provide that to the office by next Wednesday,
Oh, yeah.
that would be included in the findings of fact for the October
Yep,
2nd
yep,
or
no
whatever?
problem. I can get it, I
Okay.
can crank it out, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
All right.
Right, cranking.
My agenda here. Okay. Next on the agenda is item number 240-801, 24 Field Point Road. Linda D. O'Neill Revocable Trust, Walsh Engineering. Warner?
Yep. Good evening, Board. For the record, my name is Warner Gilliam. I'm here from Walsh Engineering, representing Linda O'Neill, who's the owner of 24 Field Point Road.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is like to just go over the same information that I provided to you all at the last meeting. So we have a PowerPoint to go along with that. Next slide, please. So, as you recall, this project came before the planning board previously. It came before you all with 14 and 24 Field Point Road. And at the time, the board had previously approved revetment work for both properties that consisted of a stone revetment that protects the shoreline for 14 and 24 Field Point. And since then, I can tell you, we've finalized the permitting and approval process for the adjacent property at 14 Field Point, and that project is now currently underway. The Foglio has begun the process of placing and pinning the riprap as was approved. But so the reason that we're here this evening is for 24 Field Point. So we've continued to have continued erosion on that site, and that certainly was exaggerated and exacerbated by the storms that we experienced over the winter. As you may recall, there was previously a failed wooden bulkhead that protected a portion of the shoreline, and we had been engaged previously to do a design and permitting for what we had brought to the board and to Maine DEP, where we had continued riprap all the way along the shoreline here. Next slide, please. So here's the plan. This is what your previous approval had included. And this, we had gone through this process in December of 2023. So the stabilization at the time, included this portion of riprap, but what we encountered at the time, Maine DEP was going through a process to formally adopt revised frontal dune maps that had been developed by Maine Geological. And these maps had been done and they were in process earlier in 2023. So the maps had been published, and what we had discovered and what many other design professionals had discovered was that DEP staff were using these maps as part of their approval process, despite the fact that they had not been adopted by the Maine legislature at the time. Those were formally adopted on February 29th of 2024. So it's important to note that at the time, when we were going through our design and permitting process with the board and with Maine DEP, that this area was not designated as a frontal dune during that initial time. Next slide, please. So at that point, in our conversations with DEP staff, we chose not to press the issue that we had, clearly submitted plans to them prior to the map adoptions. What we then did provide to them was a revised design where we kept the riprap, as you can see, that's pinned to the existing ledge. But then as we came across a portion of the property that's now newly designated the dune, because there was an existing timber wall, retaining wall that had been there, we were entitled to replace that wall. And so what we've gone through a design process, and what we're bringing before you this evening is we're bringing forward a granite-faced Sierra-scape retaining wall that'll take the place of the failed timber wall. And so as part of the permitting process with DEP, they typically, when it comes to replacement walls, they prefer to see these walls placed further back onto the property. And so you'll see on this plan, we've documented where the approximate location of the failed timber wall, where that was located. And you'll note that our replacement wall is essentially located directly behind the failed timber wall. So we're about 2 feet, on the back side of that.
Where was that, the blue or the red?
So the blue is the new, is the proposed, and the red or the brown, is location of the previous timber wall.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the pink circles, that was there before? All those-
No, so what you're looking at, the pink, that was on the previous approval, and that's the pinned riprap.
Okay, it's gotta be pinned now.
Correct.
Still
Yep.
there?
Well, no, has not been. So we have not installed any of that portion yet.
But that is.
But that will,
From the previous application, and so it's still there.
that's correct,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that portion of the design didn't change.
Okay.
The only portion that changed was just the
The wall.
wall segment.
Okay.
And so what we're proposing is the Sierra-scape wall essentially is going to be constructed over area that is there's really a bit of a ledge outcrop that's there, so we'll be having to kind of chip and level a little bit of the ledge area there to provide for a level surface to be placing the granite blocks. Our wall elevations, we have on the plan, and we have those proposed at 14 NAVD 88. However, because we're dealing with a fixed size product and ledge conditions, we know that elevation, that top elevation, is likely to vary, within a foot, just based on the existing conditions that we have there. I can tell you that, from the regulatory perspective, that doesn't pose a problem since we're relocating the wall to the back and we're not replacing it in its exact location. DEP does make for allowances to be able to increase height when you're moving that wall slightly back. But again, that elevation question is, becomes just a bit of a practical issue where we're not doing a poured in place, system. We're using a fixed size, and we have the ledge conditions that we're working through. Next slide, please. And this is another just blow up of what our proposed conditions are going to be looking like. Next slide, please. Another cross section showing the Sierra-scape, vertical cage system, with the granite facing, on the front of that. And so just important to note, all of the Sierra-scape and the granite block does wind up being, essentially pinned back to the ledge. Next slide, please. And so because it's, pictures really spell out exactly what you'll be seeing there on site. This is an image of a similar project using the Sierrascape system with the granite block. This is a project that occurred down on Parsons Beach. And so what you're seeing here is you're seeing that, the cage for the Sierrascape that's going to be filled, that essentially gets a gravel or a small riprap fill to it. It's then wrapped, with the Tensar uniaxial geogrid is what goes over that, and that gets pinned back to itself. Then the geogrid that you see that's laying on the ground, that essentially, in the case of our location at Field Point, this is all going to be pinned to the ledge. So essentially, this acts as a dead man system, right? So this provides that support for the granite wall, because this all gets tied back into the granite wall through these epoxied pins that you see in the wall. Next slide, please. This gives you a little bit of a closer look. You can see where there's drilled and epoxied pins in the granite that hooks in, to your system that then gets tied back to itself and then secured to the ledge. And so the overall that system ties back in approximately 10 feet back into the ledge. And so you'll see that on the plan as well. We've identified the area that's going to be temporarily disturbed. And again, so this photograph that you're seeing here just shows what the end result look is from the from the project that we had out on Parsons Beach. So we expect this is going to be very similar, with the exception that this project here had a defined dune on the back of it, and so that's why you see a lot of planted dune grass here. Our location, we are doing a pretty significant vegetated buffer on the back side of it that consists of, I think a fairly robust replanting schedule that just provides for a good root system to stabilize the back of the property and help prevent any further erosion. So here to entertain any questions that the board may have. We appreciate any feedback that you all may have.
Larry?
Well, no, I don't really have any questions. Looks good. I started on the finding of facts, and, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's just a modification of the previous one.
Correct, yes.
Yep.
The only question I have is that under Chapter 19, Galen had indicated that we needed a statement from the engineer to ensure there was no adverse impact to the floodplain. Did
Yes,
you
and
get a written statement?
we provided that to him in an email.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Ed, questions?
No questions. Thank you,
No,
Werner.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. If that's the case, then I'll open the public hearing for anybody that's here that wants to comment. Are there any comments in the audience? No? How about our remote audience?
No hands raised.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll close the public hearing, and I think we're probably ready for a vote.
So I move to approve the application.
Okay, I'll second that. Ed?
Approve?
I approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Okay, motion is approved, and Larry will
Yeah.
work on the findings of fact.
Yeah, I'll have it next time.
All right, thank you, board.
Thank you.
Okay,
It'll be a great reading time next meeting.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of reading.
all right.
Bring your popcorn.
Well, this brings us to our last issue on the agenda, 240802 Adele's Way, David Durrell, VM Roma Consulting Engineers, and this is an initial review. So, sure. Please identify yourself and talk into the microphone. And if you need to come out and show us what's on the easel, the microphone separates from the stand.
Jason Haskell with DM Roma Consulting Engineers, here on behalf of David Durrell and the estate of Adele Jurison. The proposal is for a private road off of Old Cape Road. It's to construct the private road to serve 5 potential lots, 1 existing house that's on the existing driveway that's there now, and 4 new lots. The 4 new lots are being proposed as family conveyed lots. So it shouldn't, as long as they go through and do the correct conveyances, it shouldn't require subdivision review. So as I said, that's an existing private driveway that's looking to widen about 200 feet of it, and then to extend it an additional 900 feet to the town's requirements of 20-foot wide gravel section. So just to give you a little history of what we've done with Mr. Durrell on this one. This was the original plan that we went forward to with, we were looking at doing this with him to be able to split the 4 lots off. The road kind of came into the center of the lot, keeping the perimeter buffer intact. Once we got to a design, we then worked with Longview Partners to go out and delineate the natural resources out here. And what they found, other than the wetlands, were some depressions that they thought were vernal pools. So they came back in the spring and took a look at them, and ended up that 3 of them were not significant as defined by the DEP, but there was 1 that was right here near the end of the road that was considered a significant vernal pool. So with that being said, we decided we needed to go to DEP to figure out what kind of development could we do out here? Is this something that could be permitted? After several months of, we started this in 2022, several months of trying to get DEP's determination, they came back to us and said, no, there was, because of how close the road was going to be to the vernal pool itself, and also the amount of impact the house lots and the road would do within what they consider the critical terrestrial habitat, which is 250 feet from the pool. They said that there wouldn't be really a way to go through and permit that. So what we've done is realign the road so that the road is completely outside of that protected natural resource area, the critical terrestrial habitat, and we've limited the amount of disturbance within that critical terrestrial habitat down to something that they could actually permit and they could get behind. So we're working with them right now. We've gone through and submitted our permits with this. Obviously, these are recommendations to the Durrell family on the layouts of the lots. The clearing limits will be, part of the approval through DEP, so that will stay the same, but the size of the house, the location of the house, some of those things could be tweaked once they get, further along. And in reality, this plan is for permitting purposes. It doesn't mean, that the house needs to be exactly the same size or anything like that, but it's just a recommendation to them. So I guess this plan does significantly reduce the amount of impact to the natural resources out there. It's down below the DEP's threshold for a typical Tier 1 wetland fill permit, but because of the vernal pool, it is kind of complicated that impact. So this new design definitely reduces the amount of impact, and it does allow for houses to be built with adequate first-time septic systems. They've gone through and checked the soils out there. The one, concern that came up as I was going through and preparing the documentation for this submission was the maximum dead-end road length for the town is 1,000 feet. The way this has been designed is the hammerhead starts at 1,000 feet, so there's an additional 100 feet to the end of the road. So this is, I guess my question for clarification is, does this require a waiver since it's 1,000 feet to the hammerhead? If it does, then obviously we'll want to formalize that waiver request. And I guess tonight we'd like to discuss your thoughts on that waiver request. At that, I guess we are still in the permitting process with Army Corps and DEP, so this is kind of an initial, run through of what we've done so far, and here to answer any of your questions you have. Thank you.
Clarification question. If it's, the hammerhead adds 100 feet onto it, is that approval from the fire chief, or does that have to be a waiver as well?
I believe it has to be a waiver, but you also would get approval
chief
from the
approval.
fire chief before you would grant the waiver.
Yep, we will definitely coordinate with the fire chief unless he's been distributed one of the copies of the plans.
Okay, I have some clarification I'd like for this. This is an estate that was, okay. The owner is listed as Mr. Durrell on the town, and I believe that's a deed of distribution. Was that put forward through the probate court?
So the original deed that was granted to Miss Jurison was actually before she passed. So she owned the property when she passed and then put it into the estate. So then Mr. Durrell has become the personal representative for the estate.
Right.
So that's the way that one is worked out. It may not be updated in the assessor's data. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Well, the assessor's data lists him as the owner, actual owner, but I'm wondering, I may need to get some clarification on that as to who the applicant actually is. Is
Yep.
Mr. Durrell a relative?
Yes,
Okay. And all the people to whom this is going to be distributed are relatives?
Correct.
By blood, okay. So this doesn't trigger a subdivision right now, but if they sold their lots, okay?
Yep.
I think they need to be advised that it could trigger a subdivision if you have 3 lots.
and they are working with a land development attorney, so he'll be directing them along the way, I'm sure.
Okay. There are some questions, some of the things, where exactly is the significant vernal pool? I thought I found it, but there were 4 pools there.
It's right
Right
here.
there, yeah.
Yep.
That's the one, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. One of the things we do not have, you've listed the deeds in the book and page, but we have to have the actual relevant deeds. So those are going to be required.
Well, those should have been in there. I apologize if they weren't.
They were not
They're not
included.
in section 4?
No, there's a listing of the deeds, the book and page, but there are no deeds copied there.
Oh, okay, I can definitely,
Do we need something from probate court or whatever indicating the person has the authority?
I
'Cause
have
I
the
wasn't-
document, oh, I'm sorry, I
I
apologize.
wasn't sure how that worked because.
I'm not completely sure either.
Okay, I feel better now.
The deed of distribution is usually to an executor or a personal representative, but I'm not sure if we need a clarification on that. I'll check
And I
with- I'll check with the
apologize for
town
that,
and see
yeah.
what we've done before.
Yeah.
So we do have the probate document number. We can see if we can
That
get
would be
something.
good. Why don't you include that, and that may clarify everything.
Okay.
Okay. We've got a new memo now that indicates that you may need a few more waivers as well. One, even though there's no proposed lighting, you may need to ask for a waiver there. Signs, even though there are no signs being proposed, I wonder if you don't need a stop sign at the end of the road where it joins with a major road.
Apologize for that. Yep, I can definitely add that to the plan, for sure.
Okay. And also, since there are no buildings proposed, you might ask for a waiver there for floor area as well.
Yep.
Which we will summarily grant.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, just to be perfectly clear.
Yeah. Trees are not indicated even though this is a wooded lot. You need to indicate where significant trees are. That's trees that are at least 8 inches in diameter at a 4.5 feet height off the ground. And you need to put in the setbacks from bodies of water and lot lines on your plan as well.
There's, we can definitely clarify that.
I would look to the planning office's memo to see what they say, and you'll find that there'll be some questions in there.
I'll send that to you.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Okay. Specifically about the right-of-way, where it's 30 feet wide and where it's 50 feet wide, to indicate,
30 feet?
well,
Section 4 says that
it has to
there's,
be 50
there's a
feet wide.
30-foot
Yeah.
right-of-way that exists today. Seems to be some confusion between the existing right-of-ways and what perhaps is a new right-of-way, or does this road overlay one of the existing right-of-ways?
When I was looking at the plans, my measurements showed that it was a 50-foot right-of-way on the plans for the whole course of the road, but the deeds mention, and again, we don't have the deeds, so I didn't have a chance to look at them, but mentions that being a 30-foot right-of-way.
So there's an existing 30-foot right-of-way that runs parallel to this property line. It shows up a lot better in the boundary survey. It runs along here, and it's to benefit the Jenkins family.
Yeah, that's what your Section 4 says. Yeah, exactly.
So the way it's written, it doesn't say anything about vehicular. It's just access, which will be providing a lot more accessible access.
Okay.
So it's basically they'll use the same road?
Right.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Are you crossing any wetlands that you need DEP permits for?
Correct.
Yes.
And so each one of the wetlands that we'll be crossing is actually going to be a 36-inch diameter culvert that's embedded into the ground. So it provides a connection between not just the hydraulics, the water going back and forth, but also for the smaller animals to get back and forth underneath the road.
And the grade of the road there, are you keeping it, what's the word I'm looking for, Larry, you know?
You mean 3 to
Angle,
1?
the
3 to
angle.
1, 3 to 1,
3 to
horizontal,
1,
yeah.
3 to 1?
Correct.
On the sides, yeah.
Yeah.
3 horizontal to 1 vertical.
Okay. That's all the questions that I had. Ed?
Yeah, I want to ask a very basic question, and maybe it's for the board or for the town as well. This is the first example that I've come across from my tenure on the board where we've dealt with something that involves a private conveyance, a family conveyance. This is obviously something that would be subject to our subdivision regulations if in fact it was a subdivision. But as it's not a subdivision, I think you're coming here asking us for approval to build a private road on one lot.
Correct.
And the fact that you're someday going to create 5 lots out of this,
I think the reason why I'm including the number of lots potential is because of the road standard. Once you get up, I believe it's about 4.
you want it to be able to be used
Yes.
for that
correct.
many, and I think that's smart, and we'll look at those regulations for that. But as to the length of the road, for example, I think that 1,000-foot length, again, I might be wrong here, but I think that 1,000-foot length is in the subdivision regulations. So I don't
Okay.
think there is a limit that the town imposes on the length of that road. I mean, I think you have some concerns for safety and all of that, but it's a straight road, and we've certainly gone, and I think we will ask you still to go to the fire chief
No,
to
no,
get
yeah,
permission.
no problem.
But I don't think we're in a position to require a waiver or grant a waiver because of that.
Okay.
The question that I have, having said all that and sort of narrowing our focus, is how does it work when you come to want to be able to divvy this up into what is now one lot and divide it into, is it 4 or 5 you're gonna make it into?
So there's the existing house, and
Yeah.
then there's the 4 others that will be conveyed to the family members.
So the road will be on the existing lot?
Correct.
Will be on the one, and it will be associated with so there'll be
It'll,
5 deeds where there is 1 deed now?
correct.
Okay. Those 4, when you create them, you have a process that says, if this was a subdivision, where you say, all right, I want to put a house here, and somebody looks at it and says, well, no, it's too close to the wetlands, or you need to do this trade-off and so forth. Normally, we would do that as part of a subdivision, because you'd be creating the lots, but we're not doing that. How and when does that happen, and do you
It's-
know the answer to that? I mean, I should know,
It's
but I...
definitely the DEP and the Army Corps and their jurisdiction to prevent impact to the wetlands. I'm not 100%
Who
sure
in the
on how the
town
town
handles
goes
that?
through,
They would go through the code enforcement office.
sure.
Galen, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, in your long tenure here at Kennebunkport.
Yeah, so we would be definitely looking at when the deeds transfer takes place, when they actually record the deeds, what names those individuals have been recorded with, and did they own the property for 5 years? So if the owners sell that property within a 5-year time period, that would trigger one sale, and we would make sure that it doesn't trigger another additional sale. Does that answer your question?
That answers part of my question, Galen. I'm thinking maybe the next step after that is somebody's going to want to put a house on the lot that you just looked at in terms of who owned it and, was it subject to subdivision review and all of that. Now, the placement of that relative to the wetlands, is that the code enforcement office as well? 1 by 1 by 1? I think so, but just wanted to check.
Yeah, we would have to do a determination whenever they come in with their building permit and their growth permit application to determine if they meet the net residential area when you reduce all the wetlands on the property. So that would be done administratively through the code office.
Yeah. So, but that's not a planning board issue.
No, it's
That's what I
not.
thought.
It's
Yeah.
not, and that's why I just wanted to sort of narrow our scope here to be one of, you're at the planning board because you're putting a private road. There's a section in the code that says, site 10.2.4, site plan review is required if you're constructing a new area for vehicular conveyance. That's a road, so. That's what we're here for, and then the fact that the road has to have certain qualities. 6.14 says it's got to have a 50-foot right-of-way, you got to be centered in it, 20-foot of travel, et cetera, because it's being built intending to serve a certain clientele, a certain number of homes.
Right.
So I just don't want us to get all, because we're used to dealing with subdivisions, I don't want to get wrapped around the axle asking you for waivers on things that really not our focus right at the minute.
But at this point, it's just one piece of property, right?
That's
It's not
right.
5. So this is just a driveway.
A road,
A road on one piece of property.
that's right, that we're being told is being planned to serve a certain number of users, and those, so therefore that will change it from a,
Potentially in the future.
right, to head off, right, so they
And at
want
that
us to review it
And,
to that criteria and tell them that if you put that many on there.
and that means just when it goes to the code office, when somebody wants to develop, the road is of sufficient requirements or
Right.
construction to support the code office instead of saying, well, that's very nice, you gotta go back and redo your road.
That's right. Or if someday they decide it's not gonna go to the family and they're gonna divide, they're gonna
Then if it,
divvy
then
this
it would
up and
be a
it'll come for a
subdivision.
subdivision review, but the road won't have to be
Right.
rebuilt.
For either one, it would meet the criteria.
Correct.
For that, but that's all we're looking at is the road, and that was where
That's what I
was
think.
struggling, yeah.
That's what I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay, now it makes sense.
Well, thank you for the clarification, sir.
No, thank you. Galen, you're good with that?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. That's all the questions I had.
Okay, Larry?
No, I'm fine.
George?
No, the only one that I had yeah, it's just a road, because I was struggling with that, and then
Yeah,
was,
different for us.
how is the person speaking on it authorized for that? Because the deed has somebody else's name on it, and it says, so I don't know if that's through probate or how, somehow that whoever is.
The deed of
the-
distribution is from an estate.
Yeah, so whatever I didn't see that piece of paper in our package saying
No.
that the person that was representing this had the authority to represent it outside of a letter kind of saying, I am
Right.
the executor.
And we need that. I think
Yeah,
we need
and
that.
whatever that document is, I don't know
Because you
which
need
is
to
the right
know-
document.
To come before the planning board in Kennebunkport, you need to have certain status. The status of owning the land, basically, having the property or having the right to do something.
And all the documents that didn't get slid into the
And those are the
application
documents
is,
that
yes,
didn't get put in there.
I agree.
Right, yeah.
Seems
But
recoverable.
I want
Yes.
to put something else in here, and that's 240 10.11, conditions attached to site plan review. And the plan, it says basically the planning board may attach such conditions in addition to those required elsewhere in the chapter, that it finds necessary to further the purposes of this chapter. Such conditions may include, but are not limited to, and they give type of vegetation, sewage disposal, and so forth, screens. Professional inspection and maintenance, surety deed restrictions, and type of construction or any other reasonable conditions necessary to fulfill the purposes of this chapter. And when you're looking at basically making 4 lots, and you're clearly saying we're going to make 4 lots out of this, I think for purposes of the town, I think you really do need to look at the road as it's constructed, almost as if it were in a subdivision, because there are parameters in the subdivision that are for the protection of, that many lots, or multiple lots. And so I think that gives you a little authority. I don't think, you're right, we probably don't need a waiver, but I think we do need to look at the road as it's going to supply 4 lots.
I disagree. I think that our requirement is for subdivisions. I think the
Okay.
ordinance is quite clear.
Okay.
What happened with the long and winding road a couple of months back? Remember there was a division on that where they built a house on an existing property?
Right, and then they built another, yeah.
But that was an existing road, or no, was that a road or a drive?
God, I can't remember.
Could I remember I remember they had a hammerhead in that
Yep.
to turn at the end.
Oh, I think we're perfectly required and allowed to ask for the fire chief to review and accept this hammerhead.
Right, right.
And that his equipment fits it and all of that, sure, that's a safety concern.
But we didn't treat it as a subdivision.
No,
No?
I don't think we need to for that.
Okay.
I think you want that anyway.
Yep.
You want to
Well,
get
all
the
I'm
fire
saying
truck.
is you probably don't need a waiver.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think you need a waiver.
Okay. Good.
All right.
So the way I'm, leaving here is, for the most part, is work with the fire chief.
Show them
At
this.
a
show-
stop
Show them
sign
this
and then-
design.
Sorry?
Show them this design and
Yep.
what you're gonna do, and ask them specifically about the turnaround.
Yep. Add the stop sign and the street sign. The big one that's gonna take some time is the location of the 8-inch diameter trees.
Trees.
That's gonna take some time, but, we can definitely look into that.
And that would
And then
be
the,
at this
the
point
right
only
title
for
and
where the
interest.
road's going though, right?
Yeah.
It's not the whole lot,
Property.
because we're not developing that at this point, we're just putting the road in.
Yep.
Correct.
Right, you're just putting the road in, but usually we do it for the whole lot.
Yeah, but
But you
that
don't
would
have
be
to at
when
this
they,
point.
develop each of those lots
Then you would,
and the
Then you'll need
setbacks,
to
then
do-
they would, again, per code office, it's over to them. So it's really looking for those trees just in that strip of roadway, not the whole thing.
Okay.
And it's what is it, 8 inches, 4.5 feet up, something like that, is it?
I forget, but it
Yeah,
is,
it's
it
something
is
like-
in the,
There's in there, it says, describes what it is.
what are they called? Significant trees?
Yeah.
significant.
Significant trees is,
So 8 inches.
Google for that.
At 4.5 feet off
I
ground.
don't know how big a
4.5
significant tree
feet
is.
off the ground, basically,
The
is
diameter.
what people use,
Right here.
call a Biltmore stick is used for that, basically.
And it doesn't mean that you can't build a road.
Right.
It just
It just
means-
Doesn't mean right now.
gives you extra information.
I don't see anything here that causes any friction for the planning board as this is presented right now.
Okay,
No, we
excellent.
just need more
We
information.
need the ownership,
Just a little bit.
the
those-
copies of the
sense.
deed and all.
And then you're gonna add the probate document and then the agency letter, right?
Correct. So I guess mostly timing-wise is, I think DEP and the Army Corps is definitely going to be the time constraints on this one.
But I think you can do that in parallel with us, and
Yep,
and our
definitely.
approval will say, yeah, that's great, as long as you get your permit from
Yep, and then come
DEP.
back for approval after that.
I would look at the memorandum from the code and planning coordinator,
Oh, yeah.
and, because it also asks for setbacks
Yeah.
on the plan as well.
I don't understand that.
We've got a lot of setbacks on that plan.
I don't understand what setbacks are needed here.
That
Since
could
we're
also
not
be
building the lot,
my
the
error.
houses.
If you, you're welcome to set up a meeting with our office as well.
Perfect. Yeah, if you could just send me that, the memo, I can definitely take a look at it, read it through, and
And
then we can
schedule
sit down.
a sit-down.
Yep,
Smart.
not a problem.
So I would propose that we continue the initial review as soon as we can get that, the deed information and the right to represent.
Yeah, that's the key.
Hey, I agree.
Yeah.
And I apologize for that. That was
No.
definitely an omission on our part, and
It's all right.
it's not typically how we like to do business.
We were going to be here anyway, so. No, it's better if we could have done it all at once.
Yeah, but this was good going through it and focusing on just the road, because prior to this reading it, I was struggling with the subdivision or not, or what am I approving here, and
It's the
that's
first
it.
time this has come up
yeah,
for
this
us.
is great clarity that all I'm looking at is the road.
Right.
I can do that.
It's not a subdivision
Yeah.
if the land is devised, if the lots are devised to relatives
Yeah.
for the deed.
Yeah.
Uh,
And if they did
For
want to
the
sell,
will, I'm
and if
sorry.
they did want to sell them, then we'd be back.
For a
for
subdivision.
a
Yes,
subdivision,
if you want
exactly.
to sell them, you would definitely
but
be
you have a
back
single lot?
as soon as you have 3 lots.
If you have a lot this big and you want to put a road on it, you're allowed to do it. We do need to review it, but it's a lot more straightforward process.
Could be an expensive road.
So I think we're agreed then to continue the initial review
That's what I,
with
Yeah.
further information. Then we need a case manager.
I'll be the case
You okay with
Thank you,
that?
George.
Good
man.
man.
Done one for a while.
Oh.
I was on vacation.
Okay, thank you.
That's carry.
We're all reading next week.
That's right. A lot of reading this week.
Okay, and Mike, you're going to read the FOF next week.
Next week, yeah.
Not
We
next
just-
week, but next meeting.
Next meeting, yeah, we just get that clarification if it's.
that's for
I've got,
cottage.
I've got one at 8 feet and I got one at 11 feet ready to go. So whatever it is, and then I'll make the one other change and we're good.
The lot size.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Okay,
Thank you. It was Jason, was it?
Yes, Jason.
Thanks.
Good.
All right, then. That takes care of site review. And now we come to, we're not going to read an FOF tonight, so we come to old business, which is discussion regarding planning board rules and procedures. And Nadia, do you want to put up where we are? Anything new?
So that's
Let
the
me
end of
pull that
looking
up.
at
Old business.
old business, but projects.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the end of projects. Okay.
Take off.
Yeah.
Excuse me, what are you asking?
We were wondering if we could look at the architectural plans, but he just
This
left.
road to nowhere is going like right along the edge of our property.
Oh,
The architectural plans will be under active applications on the website, and also you can go to the town office and look at them there. The procedure for the planning board is we go through an initial review until we find the application is complete or not approved. And then after that, the public is invited to make comments. That will be the meeting after we find the application complete.
but your access to
But you can-
information is immediate.
Right.
Yeah, you can go just to the site and you just look under, there's a folder of active ones and you just look up the one, what is this, Adel whatever way, and all the documents will be there that you can look at.
Adele's Way.
And it's kind of hard to some of them because, you know, they're fold-out plans trying to do, so they've got a set at the town, you can go down there and spread it out on one of the desks and have a lookie. Yeah, because it is kind of hard to look on a screen and try to figure out what it is.
And even though we don't take public comments until the hearing, the public hearing, okay, you can also write to the town office concerning the application. You can email, okay, any comments as well.
We didn't even know what we should.
My sense is you
That's
don't
fine.
know whether
Well-
you're concerned or not. You
Right,
just
go,
want
go
to
look
know
at the
about it.
application and determine what it is first, and take a look at it. And then if you have any concerns, then you can write to the planning board about them, but we won't hear anything until the public hearing. Okay?
And that'll give you a chance, if you have concerns, that you can express them to us, and not only the
Or
architect.
or to Jason and his team. I mean, a lot of times, you know, they just want to get their needs satisfied, and if there's a way to do it with less impact to an abutter, depending on the personalities involved, it's worth discussion.
Yeah. Usually reasonable people.
Human
sort things
process.
out.
Usually.
First, you gotta know.
We didn't even know what we should be asking.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We're gonna see pictures of the street on the lawn, and it was all facing you guys, we couldn't see anything, so it was all very.
Okay, no worries.
Appreciate it. But
All right.
that's the show. That's
That's
it.
the
for
show.
tonight.
Now we're just talking about our procedures. It's pretty dry.
Boy, is it. Boy, is it.
Thank you.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be.
Tell us you don't want to do this by telling us.
If you would like me to be more direct, I am fully capable of being direct if you need that.
Look, there's your transcript going right there.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. All right, where are we?
I believe last time we left off at somewhere between meeting procedure and Ed's recommendations to be added.
I think Galen made a new comment way up at the beginning.
At the very beginning of the document?
Yeah, he put in a new comment up there, and I wanted to point out.
So Nina did have a comment up at the preamble up top,
Yeah.
the purpose.
You can't. Without constituting a rigid set, unfortunately, you really can't put that in there, because there are legal requirements in those rules and regulations. Most of this comes from the Maine courts, the Maine Supreme Court, and the statutes on the Freedom of Information Act. That's where you get a lot of these rules. For example, a set time from which the application is submitted and the planning board takes it up. Okay, that comes from Freedom of Information Act. So You can't just put in there that we have some rules, but we don't have to follow them, is basically what that says. So I really am concerned about that, putting in a statement like that.
Understandable. I think the intent behind this was in the conversation that occurred at the last meeting, there was concern, I believe, brought up by yourself as the chair about having too restrictive of requirements within the document itself. Certainly, I can understand, we have to follow the rules that are outlined in state statute, which I believe are indicated in both of your review processes for site plan and subdivision, if I'm not mistaken, in chapter 240 and 415.
Yes, but also things like, members talking outside of the planning board meeting. Things like
Right.
that are also in the Freedom of Information Act. There's a lot of stuff in there, and if you put something like that in, it sounds like, a sentence like that, and it sounds like none of this really applies to you. You can do whatever you want. I think if you're going to have rules and procedures, then they need to follow legal requirements, and you shouldn't be saying some of them can be followed and some of them aren't followed.
Can I make a comment? I agree with the sentiment of what that new comment put in there, I'll tell you. I mean, it's surprised to hear that. I think that we need to look at what the planning board is authorized to do. And I think if you look at the administrative section, the administrative ordinance, it says you can have a planning board. I think there's 4 or 5 or 6 different lines in it. And one of them says the planning board may, doesn't say shall, it says the planning board may create procedures that are useful to them in the course of taking care of business, of something about efficient and fair execution dealing with the applications that are put before it. It doesn't say we can make rules. It says we can put together procedures that aid us. And I think that's all that's being tried to say here. It's not trying to say we can do whatever we darn well please. It says that by and large, here's how we're going to operate. I think we could certainly put something in here that says we may make exceptions to this on a case-by-case basis in the interests of fairness and efficiency by a majority rule of the board. But I think that that's within our charter. I don't think putting separate rules in place is authorized anywhere. And I don't think echoing the Freedom of Information Act is required of us or needs to be in this document.
So I'll interject just as another point of clarification. If we could scroll down to 405-16, I'm wondering if that will help alleviate concerns that might be about that statement.
Right.
Is that helpful, Madam Chair?
No, because it says that's only when you have a conflict.
So the rules align with requirements of freedom of information. Is that the idea here?
Right, the Freedom of Information Act is a state statute, so that would, if there was a conflict with it, it would go back, refer to the state statute would take precedence over our rules.
Well, my concern was that if we write the rules too strictly, then we're building a box. And, like Nina said, we're opening an avenue for somebody who gets
upset about something to take action against us, even if we're acting in good faith and trying to comply with the rules. So I was trying to give us an opportunity to say we're aligning with the rules. They're for our guidance and orientation, but depending on circumstances, we may not apply the rules, may not adhere strictly to the rules. That's my point here. So I want to try to avoid a situation where somebody wants to take action. Challenge, yeah, because that's just.
Yep, and I think staff agree with you, Larry, on your suggested amendment at the very top.
Yeah.
I've pointed out before that when you're making rules like this, they're almost like bylaws, and that you want them flexible. You don't want to add a lot of detail, because when you add detail, that basically says that you're required to follow that detail.
Right.
So if you add a whole bunch of procedures to something that you don't need, that, you know, you can have guidelines among yourselves, but you don't need to codify them in these rules. I pointed out before that, you know, when I was doing bylaws for the Chestnut Board, the main Chestnut Board, that there were committees that we have, and you can list all those committees, but that means that you have to require all those committees, and if you don't have those committees, somebody could challenge that you're not following your bylaws. And it's the same with rules. So we elected to just keep basically a finance and an administrative committee, and even though we had a science committee and other committees, we could make or not make them. We could dissolve them or we could keep them, but it allowed us the flexibility to make any committee we wanted along the way if we needed to change them. And that's the principle behind making this sort of rules, is you want to follow the main statutes, and you want to make sure that legally you're following those requirements. And you may have something additional you want to put in there, like we meet at 6 o'clock, so that people know when you're coming in, and you don't want to basically change that unless you're really going to change it for good or something like that, or, you know. But when you start adding a lot of detailed procedures, you're starting to put yourself into a situation that can be challenged. And when you start adding a lot of detailed procedures, it doesn't allow you the flexibility to go to a different procedure that somebody may want because they're working and they don't want to meet deadlines, you know, and there's no reason to meet those deadlines because it won't affect an applicant, and it won't affect the legal content of a findings of fact or something like that. You just don't want to add a lot of detail to these rules.
Nina, it sounds like you're concerned that it might be hard to change this procedure.
No, I'm
Because-
concerned that if you put that procedure in there, you've codified it, and you cannot easily change it. And you don't want to put in something and say, oh, we can negate this at any time. That doesn't serve the purpose at all.
What does the board think we should do about the ability to change this procedure? I would propose that this procedure can be changed by a majority vote at any time.
Well, do you want to just change the title from procedure to guidelines?
Why don't you change it to guideline?
That way, it's not a procedure, it's just, you know.
So I'm okay with that, but we are authorized, we're only authorized, as I read it, I was trying to stay within the letter of what we were authorized to create.
Yeah.
And the ordinance says we can create procedures.
What if we don't create procedures, we just create guidelines?
There's nothing that prohibits us from doing that.
No, no procedures.
Guidelines.
Well,
Well, these are rules.
I would have no trouble, Larry, with that idea. Let me say that.
so I've tried to avoid
Let
putting
me come
ourselves.
back to my question. those guidelines, if that's what we do, couldn't they be changed at a meeting by majority vote?
Well, these rules
It doesn't,
change.
it doesn't have to go to the town for vote.
Well, none of the.
These are our procedures, our guidelines.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the concern that says we've codified it and therefore we should be very afraid. I started this hoorah by wanting to have something in place that said, that dealt with what I've encountered as a problem. And I'll give you one example, and that is, we send out findings of facts for review ahead of this meeting. Everyone is expected to have read it. In some cases, they have come the day before. And you find problems with them, and you're in this mad rush. There should be something that says, our plan, our normal way of doing business is for that findings, the original draft, to come out, pick a date, the Wednesday before, a week before, 3 days before. Let's have that discussion. Let's write that down. That's what we do. Right now, there's nothing, there's no guidance. A new person comes on and he says, okay, you got to do the findings of the fact, you got to send it out. Well, when? What?
That's where I really have a problem. This is micromanaging. And we have a board of volunteers, some of whom work on a regular basis. The only thing you have to do with the findings is you have to make sure they follow the state statutes. And it doesn't matter whether one person writes them and puts them before the board for approval or not, or they go out for review to everybody on the board. I cannot always get to the findings of fact before they're read, but I listen to them very carefully. And that's what's been done before, is that someone comes up with the findings of fact, and you listen to it, and you either agree with it or you don't agree with it.
So
This is an idea of let's make it so that everybody has to review within a certain period of time. There's no reason for that time. Wait a minute, let me talk.
Nina, please let me talk. Okay, I get one sentence every 3 minutes here is the way we're
I
doing it.
just let you talk.
Oh, thank you.
You're now interrupting me.
Go ahead. Let me know when I can speak, would you?
Sure.
Thanks.
The only thing you need with findings of fact is certain findings, evidentiary findings, and conclusions in accordance with the main statutes. In the past, planning board members have taken and written those findings of fact, and then they've read them between the board. It hasn't been reviewed by all the members. Requiring all the members to review within a certain time period is really micromanaging.
And I don't think.
May I? Wasn't I in the queue?
Yeah, go.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I'm not proposing that everyone is required to review it. All I'm saying is they have to be issued in time for people to review them beforehand, because you will all agree, we do not read these slowly and carefully so that people can hear it. In fact, they are, quote-unquote, read into the record.
Right.
It's pro forma.
So people have the opportunity.
Yes.
Not you, and that's why I took it. It's coming out 3 days or a week in advance, so I have the opportunity to review it versus not having the opportunity to review it and having to do it on the fly while it's being read.
Which isn't.
So if you choose to not review it and just listen very carefully, and that's good enough for you to put your signature on it, excellent. It's not saying that you have 3 days that you have to review it by. That's not the way I took it, but it gives me good guidance of, oh yeah, I need to make sure I got to get this out in time for the people who want to take the opportunity that they have the time to do it.
And that's what I don't want to put on planning board members. You have the opportunity to review it when it's being read, and if you don't think that it's what you want or can approve, you have the opportunity to say, I don't approve. And it can go back for further work, or you can wait to approve it. If everybody decides they haven't heard enough, it can be reviewed in print later, and all it does is delay it a little bit.
Yeah.
The only
Well, 2 weeks.
requirement of Maine is that you approve or you don't approve.
Right.
And that certain information is in it. Making a requirement, okay, that you have to get it out so people can review. We are having trouble getting volunteers in this board. This is one of the hardest working boards in the town with a lot of work. Several people do work, and they don't have time to review, and they don't want to have to write a findings of fact and have a deadline to get it before people, you know, so they can review. You shouldn't be putting that on them.
Well, it seems that if it's either that or then we're gonna delay it another 2 weeks.
That's
Why-
right.
Yeah, and
That's
to
right.
me, that, you know, like I put together this finding of facts, hoping to be able to do it, to be able to give Mark Gallagher and them a
Yeah.
2-week jump.
And the
And it
applicant
didn't-
can wait.
Yeah, and in this case, they can, but I'm more worried about helping the applicants and making sure this gets through versus my own time. Because
It's
I've been-
not your job
Yeah, yeah.
to make sure the applicant has it in
Well,
a
no, but
timely
it's-
fashion. It's your job to make sure those findings of fact have evidentiary
Right.
information in them that a court can read and conclusions that a court can determine
Right.
whether it's,
And when I'm writing it, I
correct
put
or
that
not.
in there, right?
that's
But
right.
again, I think, I don't know, at least I feel if we can do things in such a way
What are the goals?
that's helping, you know,
So can I
We
make
already
may I
do.
make a suggestion?
We already do, but we don't need a timeline on it.
May I make a suggestion? I think the essence of this is surfacing. I think it's the question of whether or not we want to put in writing what our goals are in terms of timelines. Right? I'd like the board to consider whether they want a document that is silent on procedure with respect to what our goals are even when we do things and
yeah.
the like, or do we want to add some of that detail? Right now, we haven't even been able to get to review the ideas that I tried to put down in writing as to a proposed timeline. We're rejecting, through long discussion, the idea of having timelines in the documents. I'd like to bring to a vote at this point, since we've devoted probably an hour and a half to this discussion over 3 meetings. I'd like to bring to a vote whether or not we want to accept Nina's idea that says the document should be absent of timelines, or we should at least consider the timeline that I proposed.
The only
my
timelines
move.
that should be in the document are those that are legal requirements.
Do I have a second for that
Second.
motion? There's a second. Can we have a vote,
I'd like
please?
to have a discussion on it.
All right, I thought we were, but
Well, no,
let's continue the
here's
discussion.
No, so here's the clarification.
Yeah.
There are, this motion is for no timelines, but we do have timelines
No, no,
that are
it-
required. Are you talking about just timelines specific to the board's procedure and how we communicate internally? For instance,
Ones that are non-legal.
yeah, for instance, an application has to be submitted within a certain time before it makes it onto
That already exists.
That's the main statute.
the main statute, so you're just our procedures.
That's right, which is what this is all about. The planning board may create procedures to aid them in the execution of their duties.
Yep.
I think it should, I'd like us to decide whether we think a timeline is an aid to our doing our duties and should be included here, or is the liability that goes with that Nina's described so much so that we should leave it out of this document.
Well, I thought the procedures was sort of a supplement to the 2 charts that Galen put together that showed the sequence of events for subdivision and then just other applications.
Yeah.
So, well, you know, that was my perception, that we were just going to try to amplify some items in each one of those steps. So somehow we got so far, I mean, it seems to me that we're, there's a concern here about too much information. Well, I don't know what to do
There's
next.
a motion on the floor.
Well,
Should,
could you restate the motion? Okay, the motion is,
the motion is, I want to hear from the board, do you want to or do you not want to include procedural timelines in this document? Like I've proposed, which we haven't even got to read yet.
yeah,
Are we modifying the motion that's on the floor?
No,
I
that's.
thought that
the
was my motion. You asked me to restate it. Did I do it
It
poorly?
may be helpful to the board to clarify one act in the motion so that you're either voting for or against. I think the way the motion has been worded makes it sound, is a little up in the air because you're voting.
Let me, point taken. I move that we consider the language that I proposed on a line-by-line basis to add the timelines of our operations, of our procedures to this document.
Okay.
I think it's the next section that we were about to consider 2 meetings ago. I move that we proceed with that line-by-line review.
All right. And then I will second that.
I don't understand that motion, because there are timelines in the document that are statutory.
May I have the document up?
This part of the
new section
document?
That's in front of us here. Documentation of board proceedings and decisions. I propose that the board review that on a line-by-line basis, as we've done all of the other proposed language changes in this document.
So the motion is to continue the conversation we've been having.
We have not been having this conversation. We stopped when we hit this paragraph 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, we're at B, right? Yeah. It's green on mine.
I'm not sure what to say because I've heard 2 motions.
You asked me to clarify the motion. I'm trying to do that. Let me try it again, okay? There's only one, there's no motion on the floor right now.
Okay.
It's been rejected.
Right.
Wasn't clear enough. I'm clarifying it. I would like the board to agree to review this new proposed section on a line-by-line basis, which, using the same process we've been using. Yes, George, to your point. No, we stopped.
All right. But in general, because this is on the floor, I would prefer to not have a lot of time guidelines in here. I'm not a fan of that. Just not.
It doesn't allow for flexibility.
We're having a discussion on the motion?
I thought the motion was withdrawn.
No, we just restated it.
Okay, then in restating that motion, I think that I agree with that, because I think we should continue to go through this line by line. But my opinion is gonna be, we're putting time constraints in there, I'm not gonna approve it.
Okay.
But we can continue the discussion line by line. I think that's worthwhile. So to the motion that's on the floor for that, I don't know that it was seconded.
I seconded.
I agree that we should continue to go through line by line, through the document.
Okay?
I mean, we're gonna go through it line by line.
Oh.
I mean, yeah,
And that's what we've been doing, right?
that's valuable.
Okay. So which
We
line
will
are we
learn,
on?
we will learn something.
Well, I think line by line, you also have to take into context the paragraph, as we had been doing,
Yes.
and what the paragraph says.
Line by line, I figure.
Because each section is basically a concept.
Okay.
So, now we're on the paragraph that starts agenda, is that where we are?
An agenda. for each-
I believe so. I think that we wrapped up with section B above that last time.
Yes,
Yep.
last week you ended with, you were going to start, you ended with B, recommendations, right? B above, just above, slight, right there, reconsideration, you ended there.
Yeah.
Right. And the proposal was to take up Ed's proposal language. So you'd start with agenda. My only comment is it should say code planning and development, not code enforcement, right?
That was a suggestion from staff. That's just our official department name.
You are code enforcement also?
We have code enforcement within and assessing as well. It's called planning and development. So I was just keeping that language uniform.
No, I agree with you, Galen. It says code
Yep.
enforcement, though, in Ed's language. So it should say development.
Correct.
Right.
And then the only other question I had for Ed and the board, and this is my comment that's here, is what happens if staff doesn't send out the agenda 7 days prior? You know, something happens, a sickness, something happens. We just need, I guess, to know what happens if we miss that deadline. Do we not have the meeting?
Yeah, I think that the concern that we've been talking about is how do we make that not a deadline? Because I think, I mean, even this week, we had the very practical situation that it came out in a timely manner, and then there were changes and there were updates, and I think that's all good. Yeah, you know,
Can I make a suggestion?
yes, please.
It could just be that distributed to the board via email in advance of the meeting. I'm just saying, you might not need the 7 days, because to Nina's point, the 7 days, someone could come back and say, you didn't send this agenda
Oh,
out
no,
7
this
days.
is all null and void. I
Can't
think that.
do it
I-
within 7 days. What are the
No, I-
Someone could come back and
repercussions?
say you
There are
didn't do it.
none.
Right.
No, so let's leave that out. But,
That's right.
yeah. I'm good with that.
The main statutes say that you don't have to have an agenda.
Right.
You can have an agenda for each meeting, doesn't say when, so forth. Don't we have something that already
I just
talks
took
about the
this
agenda?
last night, and then the statute says you can have an agenda that basically says we're gonna have a meeting, and they're
Right.
fine.
Right. Don't we have something up above that says there's an agenda?
There may be, I don't necessarily think we have to delete that. The intent was to have one section that said, what are our inputs, what do we do with them, and what do we produce?
Agenda items.
And the agenda is one of our inputs. It's one of the things
But
that
it's
drives
already
us.
here. Standard meeting agenda, and it's already put out.
We can reference that,
I mean, is there a problem with it being in two places?
not to me.
Yes, you don't need it in two places.
Wait a minute.
But is there a problem besides don't need it?
Yeah, it's usually a bad idea to have it in more than one place.
That's right. It's
It'll come back to
confusing.
get you.
As long as it's consistent, I'm not sure I see what the problem is.
So staff recommended just moving that section of agenda under to a subsection, like there's that subsection C, you would just create a D if you want.
Where?
Moving from where to where, Galen? Moving,
Move your
So-
agenda section down there where it says subsection C, instead you just have a D, and just move it down there.
I'm not following.
So we would just take the agenda language that you added in, Ed, at the bottom, and add it right here in the currently existing agenda section as a new paragraph.
No, because you were talking about time limits there and into a meeting. No agenda item shall be taken up 3 hours into a meeting. That's a whole different criteria in there.
It wouldn't be
It'd be
added
a
as
D.
part of that criteria. It would be a separate criteria under this standard meeting agenda header.
Call to order it for approval of minutes. Oh, wait, go back up.
Oh, I see what you mean. It is coming under adjournment. So we could add a section 8. How about that? Could be, or,
If you look at the sections, there's a section A,
oh, yeah, I
which is
see, I
dealing
see.
with the meeting agenda. And then the B is a separate section, and C is a separate section.
I understand, but where in the document that we've already reviewed are we pointing to say the information that says an agenda is sent out in advance by email? Where is that already said previously? That's what the objection is, right?
I don't believe it's already said previously, but there is a separate section where the agenda
But
is.
Larry and Nina are both saying we can't have it in two places, it would said previously, so it must be there.
But there's a meeting agenda section, and it's implied there's an agenda. You don't have to say, agenda is sent out.
No. They're two different things. One is how our meetings run. What's the agenda? We do them in this order. The other one is what I'll call a notice. Now, we happen to call it an agenda as well, but we're using the same word in two different meanings. One of the inputs to how we do our business is the agenda. I put it back in my briefcase, but that's sitting in front of us. There's nothing in here that describes that is available. It just says, here's how we do a meeting. I wanted to say, here are the here's the inputs to our process. That's all.
I think.
An agenda.
I think.
Tonight's agenda for this meeting.
But I think that might fit into paragraph A.
Yeah,
What does paragraph A say?
go up to A.
So,
But is
There.
there something above that talks about agenda?
So we could replace, or we could move paragraph A down one and sort of shuffle and put the,
I would just add a opening paragraph, a new paragraph A and put everything else, yeah. New paragraph A talks about the distribution of the agenda. By
Agenda
email.
is sent out prior to a meeting.
Yes, sent
That's
out.
all you have to say.
There you go.
But is that already said above? That's the thing.
Well, I hope not, because that would be,
That's public notice of all meetings. That's your agenda right there, notice. It is the policy of the board to give public notice, and all you need in there is parentheses, is agenda.
Oh, my God, but it says 7 days in advance.
Well, then we're not gonna put it in there.
Oh, no, we already reviewed this. We're going around in circles.
How about if you do this? How about if you take the language that Ed proposed? And because you haven't adopted this whole thing, you're still gonna have to go back and review it. And you move it to the agenda section and then come back and see how it flows.
I don't understand what leaving it right where it is right now. Review the rest of the material, put a note there that says, maybe we want to move this later, and move, rather
right.
than all of us being stalled out.
And you've got all this stuff about agenda in a separate section.
I don't think a notice of a meeting is the same thing as an agenda.
Yeah, you're probably.
No, the notice of a meeting
The
is,
town notice, it says
The
it's
main
gonna be,
statutes
gotta have a
specifically
notice of
say the agenda doesn't have to go, it's just a notice.
and I've never been to a meeting where it didn't have an agenda,
yeah.
ever.
Okay.
It always shows up miraculously.
But the thought that Ed is, communicating is that the distribution of the agenda. Right?
Well,
The-
let's say this meeting, we had an amended agenda yesterday at 10 o'clock in the morning, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Nadia.
And it came via
So
email.
that was not within the 7-day period. So if someone's. if
We
someone-
just agreed to drop the 7 days, though,
Yeah.
from the section I was proposing.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Right, because that's just public notice, which actually has to go out to,
It's the working
Tuesday
agenda,
and
if
stuff.
you will, for a given meeting, to coin a new term.
But if we put it in our rules, anything like that, that has a date on it, gotta be 7 days, someone could come back and say, you amended that agenda, therefore that agenda is null and void because it was not within the
right, you can't.
Are you really worried about that?
I do.
Ed, you would have to worry about that if somebody
No, but
challenged
we have
that.
never said you have to
Yeah,
do it
so
a particular way.
you can keep it private. I'm not,
I already conceded, I already given in on it.
No.
Sounds like we still need to talk.
I didn't read it, I'm not gonna read it.
I think what I've heard from the board is that everyone is kind of in general consensus that having the 7 days clause about the agenda specifically is not really necessary.
Right.
So I think we can move on from the 7 days part and just decide if we want to add into the, the rules, whether there should be an agenda or.
All you have
moving on.
to do is
Leave it
say
where it is.
that agenda will be
Move on, and then we'll go
prepared
to the
for
next
each
thing.
meeting.
Prior to the meeting.
Could I make a motion that we move this discussion along, that we all agree that the 7 days should be struck from that very first section, and that we move on to the next section of the paragraph we're looking at?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, and I think the general rule that we got from this is 7 days, and some of the other ones that talk about. Gotta get closer to a microphone. I can't see over there at the end. There we go, how's that? Thank you. There you go. The references to dates, we'll just null any other ones that we find.
I
3
think we
days in
should,
advance, or 2 days in advance, or whatever.
you don't want to talk about them as
Oh,
we
yeah, as we
go?
go through, but just,
I think we've decided on this one for sure, and I was hoping that we could go to the next
yeah,
one.
next one. All right?
Yeah,
Let's go to the next one and get rid of the
All right.
error.
all right, and we've got a precedent.
So take out the agenda one.
The 7 days for the agenda.
No, take out the agenda one, because you just put it up there, that it'll be.
We haven't,
in advance of the meeting.
No, we agreed to take out the 7 days, and
Well,
I'm asking us to move on to the next section.
no, I don't want to move on when we have that paragraph sitting there, and it conflicts, and you've got
doesn't
2
conflict.
paragraphs dealing with agendas.
So you want to cut and then move, that's the idea.
Oh,
Yeah.
but they're, I think they're 2 different purposes.
I couldn't agree more, and I would, again, like to propose that we move along, having agreed that the 7 days would be removed. If later we come back and we make a decision that we need to reorganize, that's great. But right now,
That's,
there's some material up front that says, in general, here's how the meetings are organized. This says the specific agenda for a meeting is an input to us. That's all it's intended to do.
Okay.
so the next we're on minutes, right?
There's absolutely no rational reason for this paragraph. First, the town employs the person who makes the minutes. The town.
It is the
keeps-
secretary
Yes.
of this
it's-
board
That's
who
right.
does the minutes.
That's right. but
Seems to me
she's
this is a
employed-
board of the function.
Can I talk for a minute, please?
Oh, okay.
All right? The town employs the secretary, and that's clear. Okay? There's no rational reason to put in a time limit for the secretary whatsoever, because the minutes are not considered evidentiary. They have no effect on the applicant. Plus, we have 2 types of minutes. Videotapes, according to the main statutes, are minutes, and they are available immediately. You're going to put a time limit on the videographer, too? I mean, if you're going to hit the
If
secretary,
we just
you might as well
say,
hit the
is
videographer.
a time limit prior to?
The-
If you drop here like we did before, the 3 days or
No,
a day
I'm
in
not
advance.
just talking about time limits here. I'm
So
I'm talking about the secretary being employed by the town. We don't even know what the town requires of this secretary or any secretary that they employed. So this could conflict with it right there. Second, there's no reason to put a time limit on minutes. There have been times when the secretary has not been able to get the minutes to us for a meeting, and all we did was put off approving those minutes, reading and approving those minutes till the next meeting. It didn't affect anybody. What are you going to do? Slap her hand if she doesn't get it in 7 days ahead of time?
Well,
And the other thing is, the town already takes those minutes and it stores them, and it files them. You don't have to tell them to do that. The town, that's the town's business, keeping those records. It's not our business.
But under organization, the secretary is called out. And this document, under our 504, under the organization 405-4 organization, regular members and secretary. So the secretary, whomever it's employed by, is a member of the board.
That's right.
Well,
Okay,
But you don't put requirements on a secretary when the town has employed her, and you don't know what the town's requirements are of her.
if there's a conflict.
well, unless one of you wants to become a secretary.
Can I speak to motivation here? As a practical matter, we do distribute the minutes. The minutes are distributed in advance,
Of approval.
and we are in advance of the meeting in which they will be
Approved.
put up for approval. And for a variety of reasons, none of which I would slap hands for, whoever's preparing them. I think they should, just like with the findings of fact, there should be a goal in place to have them out in time to look at them for errors and give the feedback, and then have them be able at the meeting to efficiently say, yeah, these look great. We had one round, and that should be our goal. It shouldn't be to get them and look at them in real time at the meeting and reject them, and no, we need time in advance.
I'm not saying
isn't-
that we do that at the meeting. I'm saying that the minutes are not so important that we have to put a timeline on them.
I don't agree that it's an importance issue. It's an efficiency issue. But you made the
That's called micromanaging.
I disagree. I think that's a disparaging term. I think what and I understand it was, and you were very effective in that. I think that what I'm saying is that when people join the board, they should have an idea of what it is that we strive to do. Again, these procedures, we're directed to put in these procedures. We may put them in order to help our efficiency. And I think it's just more efficient to know, oh, part of your job when you join this board is you're going to get a copy of the draft minutes. They're going to come in the mail, and you ought to turn them around well, you're going to have a couple of days, or you're going to have 1 day, or you're going to have, what's our norm? What are we striving to do? Not minutes are unimportant and you might get them and you might not. It has nothing to do with whether the person who puts together the minutes is a town employee or not. It's just, our goal is to take minutes. We have someone who does a hell of a good job with it and normally gets them out, I don't know, 5 days in advance, which is plenty. But
A chance
I just
to
wanted-
review, a chance for me, a chance to review
Yeah.
them before I need to vote that say they're good.
And I don't see any
times-
problem with
Wait a
writing
minute.
that down.
There are times when the minutes have come the day before, okay, and people have not had a chance to review them. All we've done is say we haven't had a chance and put it off till the
And that's
next meeting.
fine. That just.
And we can
prior
still do
to-
that.
Just say that they need to come out prior to approval. And if that is, it doesn't say it has to be the next meeting or not, just
This
prior
has
to
been
approving.
going on for years, functioning without putting in little micromanaging rules for the secretary. And I'm sorry, she is a town employee, and the town, it's very important for the town to have minutes and to store those minutes. Okay? And they may have rules about it.
Okay.
So we haven't even looked at whether the town has requirements before we're saying, oh, secretary, you have to have us out 7 days in advance.
Well, no, and we said we would drop the days,
I'm sorry,
right? And just in advance of approval.
and then
Before I'm voting on something, I'd like a chance to read it.
But see,
We're
this
not
goes back to
Congress.
the original question. Are these strict rules that we have to abide by, or are these just guidelines, what we normally do for orientation of any new people and for reference by existing members? See, that's the fundamental question, because when I read this, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you know, you once you're on the board for a little while, you get the sense of what's going on, and but this would be, well, in my view, a guideline for what somebody could expect, some new member could expect would happen during, you know, during the lead up to the meetings, during the meetings, and after the meetings. So I don't see it as putting constraints on the secretary in this case. I just see it as something that could be useful to orient a new member or to refresh an older member's perception of what to expect in terms of minutes. In terms of this whole set of rules, really, see, I mean, I see, I'm still stuck really on how the legal status of these procedures. I'm reluctant to say, well, this is a set of firm commitments that have legal standing, instead of just guidelines. This is what normally happens, and there could be deviations, but we all would anticipate or, be aware of those deviations whenever they occurred. So that's where I'm stuck on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And take the last line there. Entered into the record maintained by the Department of Planning and Development. I doubt whether minutes are maintained by Planning and Development. I think the town keeps those records. And you don't know that, but you're making a rule there that may conflict with the town.
So if I may interject, you'll see the green slash out is suggested by staff. We think that 3 days prior and also the 1 day prior is a little cumbersome because it has been past practice at planning boards where you can amend the minutes at the meeting itself.
Yeah.
Good idea.
And so I wanted to give you all that flexibility in here, that yes, we agree that, the secretary, it's already mentioned above, that they're in charge of preparing the minutes. But that, we really should keep this pretty loose because there are times where, maybe your secretary is out or is on vacation or something and they can't approve it. And so I think this gives good guidance. I think it's still warranted. It's just, maybe we need to, look at rephrasing it so it doesn't have some of these tight deadlines that can't be made.
I think the strikeouts there are consistent with what you're saying, Galen, and I think they're good. They're good suggestions.
Really? The records are going to be maintained by the Department of Planning and Development? I don't think so. I suspect the town keeps them.
So the town clerk does keep the official minutes, but we do also keep a copy in our office as well. And we're usually the ones that also upload them to the website. That's our staff. So it is a mixture. So maybe just rephrasing this to say minutes are approved by the board by vote and entered into the record and maintained by the town.
Yeah,
That leaves
I like
it pretty
that.
generic
That
and
works?
Yeah.
Good
I
stuff.
think that works.
Perfect. Yeah, you can see that as I tried to write this, when you try to put something in a fashion organized like this, what do I read? What do I do? What do I produce? You come up with all kinds of questions, even if you've been on the board 5 years. You think, oh, what does happen to those minutes? So I made a crack at it. I guessed wrong. Well, I guess partially wrong. I love making it.
Okay.
The town keeps them.
Yeah, that works. We know where they're at.
I have no problem making a set of guidelines for procedures that do not have to be followed, but I do not want to see in rules here things that supposedly are codified that we are required to follow. I'm sorry, there is a very big difference between the two. We follow this procedure anyway.
Can I ask
We
why
follow
are you
without
calling it
being
rules?
written. If you want to have a written set of guidelines, fine. But I don't want to see it in rules and procedures that are following main statutes. I want to see flexibility. I want the opportunity to say, I'm not doing the FOF this week. I'm doing it next week.
You're doing it before it's read and voted on.
Right, and if you
That's
don't
fine.
like it,
So prior
then
to.
don't approve it, and I'll go back and rewrite it, or I'll send it to you. It's fine. But I do not want to see it codified in these rules and procedures.
I don't think the minutes section has the problem you're worried about. I think I just heard, I'm not sure who it was, ask the question, why are you calling this the rules? And in fact, we are not authorized to produce rules. We're authorized and encouraged, I think, to produce procedures. These really are procedures, and I would like to see the title of this document changed to procedures.
That's fine if you want to make it procedures, but we still need rules that are codified.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
I would say that the board having to approve minutes is a rule. We have to approve minutes.
No, it's our procedure.
I think that's something that has to be done.
Should be
I think
done.
that we
Yeah.
have to approve minutes. That's kind of basic Robert's Rules of Order
Robert's
kind
Rules
thing.
of Order, yes.
And however, as far as I'm concerned as a board member, I don't give a damn where those minutes come from, when they show up, so long as when they are here, we all agree that that's what happened at that meeting and we approve them.
That's right.
I don't care about the rest of the stuff. But that's me, I'm not a rules guy.
So are we, are we writing guidelines at the moment, comma, semicolon, rules to follow? Rules and procedures to
We're
follow?
supposed to be looking at rules and procedures. I recommend taking this stuff out and making guidelines.
Okay, so we're doing two things. We're writing rules and procedures and guidelines. Is that the idea?
Guidelines that do not have to be followed, that
Yeah.
are, you know,
That's-
that
yeah.
there are no
I know-
repercussions
I
if
know
we don't
we
follow.
agreed to proceed and go through this on a line-by-line basis. We seem to have gone back to our pre-agreement state, which is to start arguing about the need in its entirety and the reluctance to review it at all. It's 8 o'clock. I'd like to move for adjournment.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll.
Second.
Okay.
Vote? Do we need to
Did
vote?
somebody second that?
I seconded.
Mike seconded, yeah.
Okay. Fine with me.
Okay, yeah, agree.
I disagree, I thought we were making momentum. Go ahead.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay,
All right, so we come back next week, fresh, to resume.
Yeah, they're on.